It's true family vacations can go wrong, but sometimes they could go really, really wrong. Howdy, I'm Jeff Goldsmith, and this is the Q&A. My agenda is simple. Each week, I plan to bring you in-depth insights into the creative process of storytelling. Folks, I'm really excited to have with me today writer-director MJ Bassett to discuss her latest film, Endangered Species. And I do hope you also visit the Backstory site and you click the screenings tab, because we actually did a virtual screening. That's where this podcast is coming from. And we got everybody who signed up a free ticket to see the movie online in the comfort of their own home. They had 48 hours to view the entire movie and then to go listen to the Q&A, and they got to see the Q&A advanced by a few days, just like the way they got to see the movie advanced by a few days before the rest of the world had access. And the virtual screenings are free. And as we all get back to the movies, I'll be hosting in-person screenings again soon, I hope. So you could always sign up to get free invites at backstory.net/events. And there's a sign up tab there. This was not an easy shoot. They went to Africa. They shot outdoors, obviously in the wilds, and they had a good amount of time to shoot it. I'll say that was the good thing. But of course, nothing ever goes right when you're shooting outdoors. So there is a lot to talk about. And MJ was completely forthcoming about her creative process. So I know you'll dig this episode. And speaking of things to dig, I hope while you're surfing around online, you also check out Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net. You could read us on a desktop, laptop, or via our iPad app, Backstory. To see what's inside the latest issue, you could look right into our table of contents for free, of course. And if you've never read us, you could test drive us by reading an entire issue for free. And folks, if you decide that you like what you see, I hope you'll consider becoming a subscriber, and you could use discount code SAVE5. That's SAVE and the number 5. That will save you $5 off a 1-year subscription to Backstory. And look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners in iTunes and Spotify and my YouTube watchers on the Backstory Magazine YouTube page consider becoming subscribers to my passion project. So thanks for considering. But now, without any further ado, let's jump into our chat with writer-director MJ Bassett to discuss her latest film, Endangered Species. Okay, MJ, it's good to see you. How you doing?
I'm very good. Thank you very much. Nice to see you too in your slightly Twin Peaksy background. I expect a backwards dwarf to go by at any second.
Exactly. Completely Twin Peaks. I just figured since the pandemic, I would have a Twin Peaks background. I've kind of been stuck in the Black Lodge, hibernating during this pandemic. But
we all have, darling. We all have.
So here's the good news. We're going to talk about your film, but it's going to take us a little while to get there because I want to give our listeners a sense of who you are. So tell me about your breaking in story. Did you study film growing up?
No.
I
wanted to be a vet. That's what I wanted more than anything in my life. And if you could wave a magic wand, I would still probably be a vet. I was crazy about animals my whole life. I wanted to be a vet. I wanted to be a wildlife vet in Africa specifically. So I ran wildlife hospitals when I was a teenager. I was a veterinary assistant all through my teenage years.
And where did you run wildlife hospitals? Sorry to interrupt.
In the UK, out of my parents' back garden. I was in fact the youngest person in England ever to be licensed to run a wildlife hospital.
Wow.
I was a veterinary assistant, and then I left school at just turned 16, so kind of 15, 16, because I fucked up my school life because I was a very bad student. And ended up working for a wildlife filmmaker for BBC Bristol, doing wildlife documentaries. And he taught me filmmaking and still photography. And I won a kind of young wildlife photographer of the year kind of thing. And then I got asked by a British TV producer to appear on camera talking about wildlife and conservation and environmental issues. So I did that for a couple of years. And this is all prior to this. This is another version of my life. And then I bought a video camera, one of those big old VHS video cameras that, this piece on your shoulder, and started making short films. And everybody said, "Oh, you're making short films about animals." I went, "No, I want to blow shit up." Because that's the other thing I loved. I grew up on American genre movies because I'm a kid of the VHS boom. So I did that. I made short films, which were pretty crappy. And then they got better. I won a couple of very minor awards. And then because I loved horror, because that's what I used to cut school to get all of horror movies and watch them with friends. Alien was a movie I was utterly obsessed with, and then The Exorcist and all Sam Raimi stuff and Carpenter's stuff. So I wrote a bunch of movies which I couldn't sell, and I finally wrote a script called No Man's Land, which became my first film, Death Watch.
That's right. And I want to talk about it for a second. Death Watch really put you on the map. And, there's a lot of lessons to be learned on a first movie. And I'm curious, what were some of your big eye-opening moments on Death Watch?
It's tricky because naivety is a really useful tool sometimes, because you don't know what the difficulty is. Now, Death Watch was shot on film, for a start. It's shot on location. So for those who don't know, it's a horror movie set in the trenches of World War I. And the idea was, my pitch was, it's 9 guys in a hole in the ground. How hard can it be? So that was kind of how you make a small budget movie, because I sort of deconstructed what successful first films could be. And generally they're one location, small cast, genre. Now, luckily, those are the things that I really loved. So it was easy for me to do that. And I wrote this script, which was a pretty decent script. And it was a sort of supernatural. It was one of the very first war movies that brought supernatural into the fold. Michael Mann had made The Keep, which I always really liked, even though it's a very flawed movie.
Yeah, the Keep, just for anybody that doesn't know, it's slowly been coming out into America. It never really got a big release for all of Michael Mann's films, and it was kind of like a supernatural World War II movie. And you could slowly see it more now. I remember there was a time where you could only see it projected at the New Beverly or something weird like that here in LA. But I think there's places to find it now.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly flawed film, but it's still got a lot of signature Michael Mann stuff in it.
Yeah.
But I like the book, right? So I read the book, and then I saw the movie. I thought a great war suit. And then I think I was the first one years later to sort of put those two things together again, because it grew out of a book my grandfather gave me called Covenants with Death, which is about the horrors of the real experience of soldiers in World War I in the trenches. And I thought, well, that's a great place to set a horror, to make a movie which is about the horror of war very literally. And I remember actually getting beaten up by critics at the time, saying I was disrespectful to the soldiers who'd given their lives in the trenches.
Really?
And it was 180 degrees from what I wanted. I was super respecting the soldiers because I wanted to demonstrate the true horror of what they went through, again, without making it a drama, without trying to put something into a genre, which makes it more accessible. So anyway, I wrote the script. Nobody wanted me as the director. That was the problem. So I had like 10 offers for the script, which was amazing. I was broke. I was thinking of getting out of the business. I got married. I had some children, and it's like, okay, how can I make a living? I'm not qualified for anything anymore. And finally a company said, well, let's see your short films. So they thought, and they were like, oh, they're not very good, are they? It's like, whoa, sorry. But they gave me a little bit of money to make a scene from the film.
Oh, okay. A director's test. It's always hit and miss whether or not people use director's tests in situations like that. What was it that you needed to do to pass your test?
I have no idea what I needed to do, because I was too naive about the business, because I didn't go to film school, right? So I had no knowledge about filmmaking in that respect. So I just knew what I wanted to do. So what I did is I took a scene from the movie. I dug a trench. I went to a local farmer. I got an earth mover. I dug a trench. I filled it full of old ammo boxes and barbed wire and stuff. And we hit the water table, so it's full of water. And I cast a bunch of actors, professional actors, because they gave me a little bit of money. One was like a big name TV actor at the time, so he was in it, and there were other people. And there was a young kid straight out of drama school called James McAvoy, who came along.
Oh yeah,
and did it. Yeah, he went nowhere, unfortunately. What a shame for him.
Very sad, very sad.
You could just tell that kid was good. Damn, he was good, right? So I spent a weekend shooting this. I made the scene for the movie, and they went, okay, go do it. So then I had to cast it. Now, one of my producers was very good friends with the guy who directed Billy Elliot, so knew Jamie Bell. I went to meet Jamie and talked to him about it. He was like, he wanted to be part of an ensemble, and I just built an ensemble. It was Jamie Bell, Andy Serkis came along again, this was prior to Lord of the Rings, Matthew Rhys, and just a bunch of really good actors. And it has a great incredible experience. It has a really good cast, and I didn't know what I had. That's the thing. And I watched the movie back now, and I think there's still some of it's very strong. It's very atmospheric.
Yeah.
A lot of the narrative stuff I wanted to do, I couldn't figure out how to do it. And the producers maybe cut it in an order that I didn't want to do. So I was very much a victim of being an inexperienced filmmaker. But, again, it's like all my movies. I went to the Czech Republic. We dug a trench for real. We rained 60,000 liters of cold water a day into the trenches in the middle of the Eastern European winter. The actors were literally breaking ice off their costumes.
Wow.
And to this day, I think Andy Serkis says it's still the hardest thing he's ever done.
I mean, it put you on the map. It has a very lived-in feel to it, and it accomplished your goal of kind of getting into the action genre. I want to move forward a little and just see what lessons you would have from when you did 2012's Silent Hill Revelation, because obviously you had more money this time around. And wait, I forgot to ask.
Can't we talk about Solomon Kane instead?
Well, wait, what? Okay, we could do that. But what was the budget of Death Watch?
Oh, I don't know, 2 million, something like that, £2 million.
2 million? Okay.
I think, give or take, yeah.
All right. So you say you wanted to do Solomon Kane?
No, you said you want to talk about Silent Hill. I don't want to talk about Silent Hill. I'd rather talk about Solomon Kane. I mean, we'll talk about it.
No. Tell me about Silent. Tell me about your next big lesson.
We can talk about Silent Hill in the context of a film which I think fails.
Okay.
Right. So it's a movie which had a bigger budget. It's like a $20 million budget, right? So the first Silent Hill was pretty successful. And by the way, I love the Silent Hill computer games. So the games I loved. The first movie was creatively really good. Christoph Gans made it. Spent a lot of money on it.
Yeah, they did.
50 odd million or something, which is really too expensive for a horror movie. But his artistry is incredible. I came along and did the sequel. They insisted I shot it in 3D. Real 3D, stereoscopic cameras, the whole thing, which I didn't want to do. And I tried to make a movie which would service a kind of the gamer audience, the fans of the first movie. So it was a sequel to the first movie, adapted a game, and worked for a completely unfamiliar audience who knew nothing about it. And I failed on every level to make that film work, I think, right? Which is a terrible shame because it was my first big American release. And I went to director jail.
And that's a tough place to be. I mean, do you remember one specific thing that was really difficult about that sequel that you want to tell us as like a lesson, for other filmmakers?
I'll tell you what it is. The lesson is don't make a movie that you're trying to make for other people.
Great lesson.
Make the movie that you want to make. And I've never done it ever again. Well, that's not strictly true, but it's something you know that you're doing it, right? So with Silent Hill, is my great friend Samuel Hadida, who produced it, who also produced Solomon Kane with me, for me. I was a very inexperienced filmmaker back then. So with Solomon Kane, which is a movie I was incredibly passionate about, I really wanted to do it. I knew how to do it, how I wanted it to be. And Sammy was like, okay, he let me do it.
Yeah.
He didn't quite, he's like, okay, you have a vision. With Silent Hill, it was more, I've got to make this movie. The filmmaker who was going to do it can't do it now. Would you do it? And I'm like, yeah, I love the games. Let's just do it. He was like, I want it to be this kind of film, and the studio wanted it to be this kind of movie. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that for you guys. And I was kind of in an unhappy place in my life as well. And none of these are an excuse, because the audience shouldn't have to suffer any of my problems or decisions. But the movie ended up not being any real thing. It was no one thing. It wasn't so, should it have been more gory or more frightening? It shouldn't have been in 3D, because who gives a shit about 3D? It's the stupidest format ever, right? But at the time, everything was 3D. So I'm trying to make a horror movie that should be dark and about shadows. It's lit, so the 3D works.
Right.
So the monsters look crappy. And it's like just the list of things, the mistakes I made. The mistake I made most of all was not fighting for what I thought was right and being prepared to walk away from it.
Well, let's talk about happier times. You did some really great TV work as well. And then I swear we're going to get to today's movie. You wrote and directed on Strike Back. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people really love that show. What was your most important lesson for Strike Back?
Strike Back was where I went after director jail, right?
So, yeah, I know.
Yeah, so I'd worked with Philip Winchester, who was one of the leads in Strike Back. And then Strike Back, for those who don't know, is a big action show that was a Cinemax, HBO, Sky TV in the UK project, which is basically just a show about a military team who go around saving the world from terrorists, which is a perfect show for me. So I'd had Philip in Solomon Kane when he was a younger actor. And then after Silent Hill, and I was licking my wounds, wondering what the hell I was going to do, we had a chat, and he said, hey, why don't you come and do a Strike Back? And I was like, well, I love you, Phil, but you're an actor. You can't offer me a job. It doesn't work like that. But it turned out the producers of Strike Back, a company called Left Bank Pictures in the UK, liked Solomon Kane. And they said, you really want to go from movies to TV? I was like, yeah. I mean, I got nothing else to do right now.
Right.
They said, well, we're shooting in Africa, in South Africa. Go down and do an episode. I was just guest directing, basically. I went down, and it was like I was a pig in shit. It was fantastic. I knew I got him. Philip, I already knew. Sullivan Stapleton, who was the other lead, he was a kind of Australian tough guy actor, and everyone was like, "Oh, what about Sully?" It's like I got on with him incredibly well. So suddenly it became this joyous world of just rock and roll filmmaking, which I knew how to do, weapons work and explosion and blowing shit up and car crashing and tactical military things. And because I come from an indie filmmaking background, it didn't matter what the resources were changing or shifting or that the scripts weren't ready. I was like, fine, I'll pitch in and write the script. So they liked my episodes and they asked me to come back as lead director for the next season. And then ended up as an executive producer of the show as well. So essentially it became my show for a couple of seasons.
I mean, you did, I think, 15 episodes at least.
19 actually I've done.
There you
I
go.
did in total. And I produced, I think I'm credited as a producer on like 30 or 35. And I wrote a bunch as well. So it just became a thing where I loved it. We went around the world saving the planet all the time.
And it really kind of opened up more TV. You got to work with Bruce Campbell for Ash and the Evil Dead. You did an episode of, which I'm sure was a blast. Is there anything you want to tell us about working with Marvel on Iron Fist, which you did an episode for?
Well, I mean, every TV is really a very different beast, right? So UK TV works very different from American TV. So what I learned, so UK TV is much more involved. As a director, you're more involved. You get to do much more post-production. So you're more of an author of it. American television is very different. It's much more of a factory floor where you get brought in, given a script, that's what you do, and then you leave. And I was a bit shocked. So the first TV after I'd done all my episodes of Strike Back, and I was dipping in and out. So I did a couple bits of Strike Back. Then I came and did a show called Power, which was for the Stars Network,
right?
Which 50 Cent was one of the producers of it, and Amari Hardwick was the lead. Now that was shooting in New York City, and they wanted me because there was a particularly action-driven episode, and they wanted somebody who wouldn't be intimidated by that. And I was like, yeah, I can do this. Because after doing Strike Back, all action in TV is smaller, right? Yeah. So, like, yeah, I can crash a car. What's everyone panicking about? I can do a gunfight. What's everyone panicking about? It's like, these are easy things. I've jumped out of burning buildings. This is, I've crashed cars. I've landed a helicopter on top of a moving train.
Go back. When did you jump out of a burning building?
We do. We set them up. Building fire.
I think you meant you personally jumped out
in real life.
Like
wires. I would never ask an actor to do anything I wouldn't do myself. That's my rule. Right. So if I've got actors, and when you've got crazy actors like Phil Winchester and Sullivan Stapleton who want to do all their own stunts, then you've got to step up. Right. Sure. It's like and that's what I firmly believe. So yeah, we landed helicopters on moving trains and all that kind of shit. So it's great. And that's also outside of the US. The US rules of filmmaking are very different. It's a lot more conservative in its approach. So, and it's, like I say, it's a much more corporate way of doing things because television's become such big business.
Right.
So you have to accept that you're given a script, the showrunner is in charge, and you service that vision. Now, it makes complete sense because if you're a director passing through their world, there's no point, only one person has the entire vision for what the show should be, what the character should be, and that's the showrunner.
That's right, because it's a symmetry of storytelling, of course.
Totally. So, for instance, I've just, like 2 days ago, finished doing an episode of The Terminal List, which is Chris Pratt's new TV show. Now, Dave DiGilio, who's the showrunner of that, is very specific about what he wants. So he sits down with me and he knows that I'm a super experienced director and they're very happy that I'm there, even though my episode doesn't have a lot of action in it. They're like, okay, great. We want to make sure that you hit these beats. We want to make sure that the character's doing these things and that the look of the show is this look. So my natural shooting style is very different from the Terminal List look. The DP is set a look. It's the kind of lenses that are being used, the pace of the camera movements, just the setups of shots. And for me, I look on it as this is another new education. I embrace it. If I kicked against it, it would be the most awful experience ever. But now and also because I get to do my independent little movies in between these things where I have really full creative control, even though there's no budget, my ego gets completely massaged in that environment. And so I can go into somebody else's world and say, how can I help? You need to make your days. You've got a 10-hour day. I'll hit 10 hours. Whatever you need to help you get your pattern, because it's a machine. Television is a machine, right? And if you don't keep ahead of it, you'll get eaten up, and then the whole thing spins out of control.
Well, I liked Iron Fist as a show, and hopefully you'll get another chance to work with Marvel again. But getting to today's movie, obviously we have Endangered Species, which you co-wrote with Isabel Bassett, and it's
my daughter.
And how old was she?
She's 20, I think 21 when we wrote it together. She's in the movie. She's the short-haired girl in the movie.
Right. But she wrote it when she was 21 with you?
She wrote it with me. So we wrote Rogue together. My last movie we wrote together.
Right.
When she was 20. She swore she would never be in the business. She hated everything about the film business. She's a very good writer. And then one day I'd come back from being away and she'd put a script on my desk and it's like, this is really pretty good script. Shit.
Yeah.
Right. So I sent it to anonymously, where I took her name off it and I sent it to a few people and said, I've been given this script. What do you think? And the damn coverage on the script was better than anything I'd ever written.
That's awesome. Which
is great. So I know she's my kid, obviously, so I'm going to open doors. I believe in nepotism. I didn't go through all this shit myself to not help my children.
That's
so
great.
So when I was doing Rogue, the Lion movie with Megan Fox, I knew what story I wanted to tell on that one, but I didn't have time to do a first draft. So I wrote a detailed treatment and I said to her, give me what I call a vomit draft. Puke this script out. And it doesn't matter how crap it is. Just let's see if there's something in here. So she wrote it and she hates genre movies. Can't bear them. Never seen Star Wars, doesn't like the Marvel movies.
Wait, never seen Star Wars? Come on.
Won't watch it. Thinks they're stupid. Thinks they're stupid movies. Nope. Tried. She thinks they're stupid. Also the last three are, but other than that. So she likes drama. So she leans into drama and character in a way that I don't necessarily do. So we're actually a pretty good team. So anyway, so I gave her, she was 20, I guess, when we did Rogue, and she appears in that. She doesn't want to be an actress, but again, she's cheap.
Right.
and she's not, and she's a pretty good actress because she doesn't care.
Right.
She's completely okay to be exposed and vulnerable and ugly and covered in shit. She's got no vanity. And she'll say she's tough as boots. We did that. And then we did, and after Rogue, we thought I got another one that I wanted to do, which was this, it was called Kenya originally. I had the outline again. It was a script that we'd found, which I liked the idea of. The central idea I really liked, but I didn't like the script. So we paid the writer for his work, and then Izzy and I basically threw everything out, kept the central idea, and then rewrote it in a way that I wanted to do, dealing with issues that I liked and the conversations I wanted to have.
Okay, I was going to ask about that. So when it says story by Paul Cromwell, that's who you're referring to, right?
Yes,
so Paul Cromwell wrote Kenya. Got it.
Well, he wrote a script called Kruger,
okay,
which had been around for a while. And then it came across my desk and said, hey, this is an African movie. And it's like, yeah, but and I don't want to disrespect Paul at all, but it's like, no, that's not a movie I want to make because I don't find it's dealing with the things I'm interested in. But the core idea of a family who gets stranded in a national park in Africa, I'm not going to steal it from him. So we bought the script.
That's great.
And rewrote the whole thing to service what I wanted to do. And that's kind of how it grew out because conservation is my great passion. And I wanted to make a movie that allowed me to have that conversation. And it's still a very low budget film. And in the same way that Rogue was low budget, if you make them for next to nothing being a relative term, but very cheaply.
Well, I was going to ask that later. What was the budget of Rogue and what was the budget of Endangered Species?
Well, Rogue's around 2.5.
Oh, wow.
I think.
You got a lot on the screen for that. Okay.
Yeah, I got Megan Fox on the screen for that as well.
Sure.
So she's not an inexpensive item.
Yeah.
And Kenya, Endangered Species, as it's now called, was 1.8.
Really?
Like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. That's great. And what was the schedule for Endangered Species?
Rogue was 22 days. Endangered Species was 18 days.
18 days. Wow. You got a lot on the screen. So you have your idea. You're co-writing now with your daughter. Mm-hmm. Tell me how it works. How important is outlining to your process? Like you talked about having a treatment and asking for a vomit pass. Is that basically where you start? And that's how you guys collaborate together?
Kind of when I know that she's going to have it because she'll go off piste really quickly if I let her. So it's like, these are the lines I want you to paint with. These are the stories. We talk about the characters.
Right.
This is the structure that I want to achieve. Right. And so I'm a big believer in structure. Structure is everything.
Yeah.
Right. You can do weird things with it, but you still have to have it. So it'll be, this is a story I want to tell. Here's 10 pages. And there can be beat sheets sometimes, treatments. It depends who's going to read them as well.
Sure.
So for my finances, they want to know, obviously it's not carte blanche to make anything I like. So it'll be, this is the world I want to play in. I go, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And this is Lionsgate, Lionsgate Grindstone, and a company called Capstone Pictures are my partners over here. And they go, great, we need certain things from this movie to satisfy our requirements. It's got to be genre. We'd love a part for a female lead is always useful to us. We know that you're going to blow shit up. We know that you're going to shoot some guns. Make sure those things are part and parcel of what you're doing.
Right.
If you do that for us, you can do you.
That's great.
Right?
That's
and they know that it's great. They know that I'm a skilled enough filmmaker now to deliver something workable. We've all seen grindstone movies, which are kind of, they're at the edge of what is acceptable as a good piece of filmmaking. They know that I'm going to do everything I can to make a good movie with the resources I'm given. I don't want to ask for too much, because the more I ask for, the more oversight I have, because everybody wants their money back. My partnership with Lionsgate's been great. They let me get on with it. They get access to the rushes. I never get notes on them.
Sure.
We go through it. They look at a cut. They say, can it be 5 minutes shorter? It'll be 5 minutes shorter. So it's just a kind of that relationship. I know that if I was making a Marvel movie, at $100 million, every decision would be second guessed, which was pretty much what happened on Iron Fist. When I was doing TV for them.
Right. But I mean, obviously in a bigger budget, you're also satisfying different story arcs, the way the MCU is all connected. So of course that makes sense as well. Okay. You started with your outline. How long did it take you to really crack an outline before you were ready to go to script stage? Because it's always interesting to hear how long your outlining process is.
It depends. That's a tricky one. It depends what the movie's going to be. With Endangered Species, it was a couple of days.
Oh, okay.
I knew what the movie was.
Yeah.
So my biggest problem these days is I don't like to write anymore because I'm lazy.
Okay.
But I know what it is I want to do. So there's this kind of just let me make the movie. You'll see what it's going to be. Why do I have to have a script? I can just tell it. It's like that. Right. And which is completely ridiculous, of course, because you have to communicate it. But so with Endangered Species, which is not a super complicated structure, family arrive in Africa. Yeah. Family arrive in Africa. Something goes wrong. They have to survive. Do they survive?
Yeah.
I mean, that's it, right? Which is the broad structure of the screenplay that I like. That's great. I'll do that. It's the minutiae of it. It's okay, what are the bad animals? What can I do? Right? Because I know that I'm going to go to this real place. I'm not building sets. I don't have any freedom for that. It's what can this country give me?
Right.
Right. I'm not going to have real animals because I won't work with real animals because I don't believe in that. So digitally, what can I achieve? Now, in Rogue, the digital lions were probably the weakest part of the movie. And I got beaten up a lot for having crappy CG effects because we live in a world where Marvel exists and Jurassic Park exists and, Life of Pi exists, where photo-real animals can exist. So, and I'm working on a, sub $5 million budget. It's very hard to achieve that. So with Endangered Species, I knew that I had to bring the number of digital shots down. So I had to use the animals in a different way. So Rogue, I had 60 digital shots. In Endangered Species, I had 30.
Wow. I mean, I got to say, I was going to talk about that later and we'll still get into it, but the digital animals here looked great.
They're much, much better. Same company.
Yeah.
Who did them. Because I gave them another swing at it, basically.
Right.
But I also learned.
I think I could tell that the baby hyena, the baby rhino. There was a moment or two. I'm like, oh, okay, that's probably digital because you can't really get that. But there was some really good stuff with the mom rhino and the hyenas. I thought were great. And shooting at night obviously is helping your cause as well.
Well, this is the thing, right? So this is a technical thing which I learned, and I should have paid more attention to it. Right? It's off Rogue, and it's a huge lesson. I thought shooting Rogue at night, making with the lions, would be a blessing. I thought it would be clever because it's they're buried in darkness. You don't have to see it. That's not the problem. The problem is when you put digital black and real black together.
Right.
In your post process, the color spaces don't work. So what you end up is with an animal that doesn't, or any digital effect that doesn't quite fit into the color space and feels like it's not real. Now, when the stuff is, I don't know how technical you want to get, by the way, but
I want to get as technical as you want. So please continue.
Okay. So cinematic color space and home entertainment color space are different. So the grade that you do for a theatrical release is different from the grade you do for when you're giving it to Netflix or Amazon or whoever, and they compress it using particular compression algorithms. Neither of my movies are going to get theatrical releases. So, but I stupidly did a theatrical grade on Rogue for the Lion, which looked great. But then it got compressed for distribution, and it looked shit. Right?
Interesting. So you're saying to not do a theatrical.
Well, for me, there's no point because I know my movies are not going to be seen in a theater. But also the thing is, if you watch even the most expensive CG-driven movie on Netflix, the effects look crappy compared to what you see in the movies,
Sometimes,
where they're fully
there's
real.
effects sometimes, but yeah, go on.
But watching that, they'll always look slightly 2D. Yeah. Particularly nighttime stuff. Just go watch again. Watch with that eye, right? Stuff shot in the day is integrated far better than stuff that's shot in darkness. And I completely got beaten up on Rogue for it, and because I was learning technical stuff as I went along, because I hadn't really paid attention before. So with Endangered Species, almost all of it is during the day.
I keep thinking about the hyenas at the end of
at the very end. Yeah, but we're a long way from those hyenas.
No, you're
They're
right.
not close-ups.
Right. Yeah,
because I knew that I was going to get fucked again.
It looked fantastic. It really did. Tell me something about writing. When you sit down to write, how many hours do you give yourself a day to write, or do you have a set number of pages?
No, Lord, no.
Well, tell us about your habit.
My habit is waiting until somebody's ringing up and saying, "Where the fuck is the script that you said you were going to send us?" Then pulling a 24-hour session to write it. I have zero discipline. I'm the worst writer. Right. When I was younger, I was much better. Now, because I'm only writing for me.
Sure.
And I really, really hate deadlines, and I really like coffee shops and brunches. So that's kind of I need pressure. I need multiple projects going at the same time. I need multiple deadlines, and then I'm good.
Well, right? So how long did it take you and your daughter to collaborate to finish your first, your polished draft?
Well, she writes like a bullet from a gun. So I'll get a script from her in 10 days.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Because again, she's got a script. So she'll write down, she's young and she's got a vision and she's got enthusiasm and she wants to do it. Right. Because now she's lit the fire under me, I'll be like, God, I got to do this damn thing. And I'll polish her stuff. So sometimes sometimes I throw out her vomit draft and it's a word one rewrite, but with her ideas in mind, going, I like what she did, and I'll go and review that. I say, I like that piece of dialogue. I like that stroke. That was clever. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
So I'll incorporate that in. So in terms of words, the words in the screenplay, the typing words are me with her eyes. So she has a version that she's written. I have a version that I've written. Then she'll then talk to me. So I can probably turn around a screenplay in 4 weeks.
Okay.
If I have to.
That's great.
Generally, when you're negotiating contract terms for other people's script, it's like 8 or 12 weeks, you said, because you want all that time to stare out at the ocean and find your muse. When you're writing television, none of that exists. This is the deadline. You have 48 hours to write this script.
Well, yeah.
Right? It's the factory floor. So it's very useful to have done that, because the truth is, if it mattered, I could do it. But mostly I'm lazy.
Yeah, it's a good experience. It preps a lot of directors. And, I guess the last thing before we get into the spoiler section is, what would you say is something really important as a director that was really good for you to prep? Because prep is really important, because there's so much homework you could do that you shouldn't be doing on set. What was something important in Endangered Species that you needed to get right in pre-production first?
Okay, let me tell you something. I loathe prep.
I really? Hate it. Okay.
I want as little prep as humanly possible.
There's no one way to do it. So tell us why.
I like to shoot. That's it. The reason I'm a filmmaker is I like to make film. I like to be on the set with actors. I like to be figuring shit out. Right. I like the pressure cooker of that environment. Right. There's people say like, I don't know. This is a product of some experience. By the way, I'm also not a very good director compared to some extremely good directors who probably do lots of prep. But I just like my way of doing things. I've got into a groove. So I prep in the sense that I know exactly what I'm going to shoot, what I want to shoot. And I don't know if you call that prep. When I write the scenes, I know how I'm going to make it. I could be 6 months out. I know what I want to do with it.
Well, some directors, intensively storyboard. And obviously, when you're talking about special effects for your animal attacks, you would think that pre-visualization and storyboards would be important. Was that important for you?
Not really. No, because again, with Endangered Species especially, it's like, well, the rhino's going to be over there. That's it. There's a cross on the ground. That's what, and I will explain what the rhino is going to be doing. And there's no the storyboard is not relevant. It's like I'll draw. I carry my little iPad mini with me, and I'll do a sketch and say to the CG guys, it's going to be there. What do you need for that to happen? I say, well, we need this, and we'll need to get our shots of everything. So in that respect, I'm being a little disingenuous.
Sure.
I'll make sure everybody gets what they want. Right, that's the thing. But if my first will say, do you have a shot list? I say, no, my shot list is you folks doing what I'm asking you to do.
That's fascinating. I love the gung ho attitude about it.
It's not gung ho. It's completely meticulous, but it's meticulous already inside me. So, sure. But also I don't want to be so prescriptive that when something really cool happens, I can't be reactive to it. Now, it's different in television. So they'll say, do you storyboard? And I'll say, no, I don't storyboard anymore. Right? I'm not a first timer. I don't, if you're employing me to trust me to do this, who's looking at the storyboard? Why do you need a comic book to explain? I have a script.
Sometimes, especially for safety and stunts, and sometimes for effects, they're very important. But obviously, you're able to
explain safety and stunts to me. Previs. I'll get a stunt previs on a fight sequence. Sure. And say, okay, this is what we're going to do. If there's danger, it should be the safety people are signing off on it. I've described what I want. Stunts on. Safety goes without saying. You have to do it.
Of course, and that's what I was talking about, in which those parameters usually have to be met for the safety department, so they have something to actually sign off.
They win. They're the most powerful people on a film set. Right. So, my health and safety guys who I've worked with, they kind of know where I'll push, and I say to everybody, I'll say, on a day where there's something dangerous happening, I'll say, listen, we're going to do this. Everybody, communication is the key. And this is on a set where so many things fall apart. Right? Prior to a setup, what can happen is all the departments will go off and do their thing, but nobody's explained the unifying idea behind what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
So I'll always say now, and even do it on the TV stuff, and people are like, why are we doing this? I'll say, okay, this is a new setup. We're going to do this. We're laying a camera track here. The boom can go here. We're going to have the access to do this. The stunt will be this. Everybody understands what we're trying to achieve. If you don't communicate, that's where stuff goes wrong.
That makes sense.
It really is being in control in that way. The health and safety people have the final word. They'll go, no, you're not doing that. Yeah. But it's my job, I believe, to push all the way up to the place where they go, nope, you're not doing that. And then I go, and I never argue. I just completely capitulate. It's like, sure, I'm not. I don't want anybody to be hurt on anything I ever do.
Of course,
right? It's just movies. And then when I say hurt, I mean broken bones. I think scrapes and cuts, fine.
Well, tell me this. I want to continue this in the spoiler section. So for any of our listeners in iTunes or Spotify, to the podcast, or anybody watching the Backstory Magazine YouTube page where you could watch this interview, if you have not yet seen Endangered Species, press pause, go watch it. You could see it in all the usual places that you could find it: on demand, Amazon, iTunes. It's there for you. Go watch it, come back, because we're now going to be talking about these spoilers specifically. And with that spoiler alert, I think the best place to start is the great casting you did of Jerry O'Connell as Mitch, the poacher. We don't realize that Mitch is the poacher in the beginning, but he really had fun with it. And I'm just kind of curious when you got the idea to have Jerry O'Connell as the bad guy.
Jerry O'Connell was accidental casting because he's married to Rebecca Romaine.
There you go.
That's it. I didn't, in no world did I imagine Jerry O'Connell as the bad guy in the movie, up until the point where Rebecca said, oh, Jerry wants to come and help, right? Because she'd said to me when I'd cast her, she'd read the script, liked the script. And remember, I made this movie during COVID, so lots and lots of people wouldn't travel.
Which is wild.
It's a lockdown movie. So it's huge challenges to make the film in that respect. But Rebecca was like, yeah, I'll come. I'd like to bring my family. They have two girls. I said, yeah, sure. I said, Jerry wants to come. He's just happy to help. He wants to be there. And I'm like, Jerry? And I looked up, it's Jerry O'Connell. And I hadn't cast my poacher. And Jerry's great. I said to Jerry, you want to just be in the movie for a few days? And he's like, yeah, love it. Love the script. Would be great. And it was entirely accidental. It was serendipitous, perfect, accidental casting. And he smashes it. Yeah. He's such a great guy, such good energy, and brings this he's not quite a comedian, but he brings comedian energy to it.
Absolutely. And I mean,
Slightly sinister.
Yeah, it was interesting to see him in that role. And what was really good was he has this monologue about, being a poacher, right?
Mm-hmm.
And being vilified for it. But his way of leaning into it was saying that he's just helping indigenous communities, profit from their natural resources.
That's right.
He's helping local communities, which is, a terrible thing to say about what they're doing. And there's also a great line in there earlier, not by Jerry O'Connell, but by one of the other characters talking about the politics of mining cobalt in Africa.
Oh yeah, the kid. Yeah. The Michael Johnson's character.
Another smart line. It's basically about the rest of the world coming in and taking those resources, but especially in poaching, you're taking lives. And it was we've seen the bad poachers before, but this was kind of a different breed of bad poacher in which he's literally convinced he's not doing anything wrong and couldn't care less about anybody's lives.
Totally.
Tell us about kind of constructing that and your stance on poaching, because obviously there's a great anti-poaching message here, and it's really fascinating to me.
Well, there's all characters and mouthpieces for what we want to say to some degree, and there's also, they say your lead character is always a reflection of you as the writer. Now, it's not entirely true, but there's certainly things, all of the characters say things that I wanted to say and I feel in some capacity. The underlying message of the movie, it's an anti-poaching movie, it's a conservation movie, it's an environmental movie, because that's what I care about. I think the only conversation we should be having now is our planet is dying. How do we fix it? Nothing else matters. Nothing else we do matters, because the life support system that we live on is failing because of the things we're doing, right? So now I can only do so much as myself, and we all can take individual responsibility, but it's a kind of corporate thing as well. And it's a governmental thing. But if I can make a movie which at least has the conversation and allows me to spout my views, which people may or may not agree with, at least I'm doing something. And I've learned that, most of my career was just making things to make things because I liked making things, or I needed a job, I wanted to pay a mortgage, or whatever it was. And as I've got older and I've become happier in myself, when I came out as trans and I'm living a life which I feel much more comfortable in, you go, all right, now let's just say shit that I want to say, right? So, but also at the same time, you're trying to make a movie which is not just a typical, there's a villain, there's a good guy. Everybody has a point of view. Everybody's right in every scene from their point of view. Sure. When I was working on Power, Courtney Kemp, who's the showrunner of Power, said something to me very proud. He said, every character is correct. They have to be. Otherwise, they wouldn't say the things. Now, it's in their own context. So when Jerry O'Connell's poacher says, I'm helping Indigenous people benefit from their own local resources, he's lying and he's a horrible scumbag. But there's an argument to be made that should Indigenous people be allowed to profit from the things that are around them? And who are we as Westerners from the developed world to say, you must save your rhinos? We killed all of ours. There's no European bison left. We brought North American bison to the brink of extinction. There's all of these things we have done. We're looking at these developing nations and saying, oh, no, you must preserve it because we like to come and take photographs of it. Now, does it make any material difference whether rhinos live or die to the global issues? Probably not. But it speaks enormously to how we as a species feel about our own world. So there's kind of those things going on there. And it also goes back to that comment, that you hear commonly about every antagonist is a hero in their own mind. So, he thinks he's brazenly doing something excellent for the community and stuff like that. So yeah, it plays into that. He can justify it that way. Yeah, it completely does. And, when Jerry takes the rhino horn and he offers it up to Phil Winchester's character of the dad and says, you're an oil man, this is worth more than its weight in gold, which is true. When rhino horn finally gets to its markets in China and Vietnam, it is worth more than its weight in gold. But he says, you're an oil man. You guys have done more to kill the planet than anything I can do. Right? I'm just killing rhino. You're destroying a planet.
Yeah.
And that's another conversation, right? So Philip Winchester's father figure, who works in the fossil fuel business, and he has been taught by capitalism to say that making money is important, having things is important. And in the final moments of his life, he realizes none of that's important. Family is important. Values are different. So
It's
I can have
it's a great scene.
Yeah, it's a really good scene, and they both play it beautifully. And it's, to me, that's the movie, right? The movie exists for that scene to take place. All the other stuff is great. I love it. I love that. I mean, Michael Johnston's character talks about cobalt mining for batteries for our cell phones, and we don't give a shit about that because we get to talk on our cell phones, right?
No, it's something that really needs some reforming as well. And just while we're on poaching for a second, there's in the end credits a statistic saying that between 2015 and 2019, $24 billion was made from poaching elephants and rhinos and selling their tusks. And I think it's important to remind people that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but to my knowledge, there is no functional purpose to poaching. It does not serve a function other than a false belief that there's a medicinal something in it, and it's sold every which way to Friday. It's going to help you cure cancer. It's going to help you cure all these things, but none of it is actually scientifically correct. And
rhino horn is fingernail.
Right. Exactly.
It's just compressed hair. It's nothing. But I think to speak to that in a slightly wider issue for a moment, poaching or the illegal wildlife trade is the second or third biggest illegal trade on earth after drugs, guns, and human trafficking. It's in that world, and the people who do one almost always do the other.
Right.
The bigger, and poaching is not just killing rhino for their horn or elephant for their ivory. It's taking lumber and timber from primal forests. It's killing pangolin. It's everything that we do. It's when you buy a snake from a pet store that it's been taken from the wild. All of those things are part of that trade. But
your $24 billion number was in reference to rhinos and elephants specifically.
No, it's specific. It's the illegal trade. It's endangered species.
Just making sure.
So that number is not specifically to rhinos and elephants. But the point of it is, like, obviously, elephant tusk is just for ornamental purposes. It has no use whatsoever.
Right.
And you have to kill the elephant to take that. Rhino horn, you can cut off a rhino and the horn will grow back if you just sedate the animal. But of course, nobody does that. They kill the animal. Oftentimes, they don't even kill the animal. They will chainsaw the horn off a still living animal to go into the trade. So that can't be a good thing,
That's
and yet
terrible.
there are places in Vietnam, in Laos, in Burma, in China, areas of Thailand where you can eat tiger meat, for goodness sake.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
It's crazy. And that's what Rogue
I'm glad
was about.
that you got the message out there about it.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, is that Rogue, which was a movie which is ultimately about lion farming in South Africa, where they were doing the same thing, breeding the cubs for tourism and then killing the adults for canned hunting or for their bones for the Chinese medicine market. They are now making lion farming illegal in South Africa.
That's great that your film had
who knows what effect it had, but I hope so.
Yeah. That's awesome. Ooh, hey, I'm jumping in really quick to remind you to check out Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net. You could read us on a desktop or laptop or via our iPad app, Backstory. If you've never read us before, you could read an entire free issue and test drive us. And if you like what you see, I hope you become a subscriber and you could use code SAVE5. That's SAVE and the number 5. That will save you $5 off a 1-year subscription to Backstory Magazine. And look, it would mean a lot to me to have my YouTube watchers who are watching the Zooms of all these interviews on the Backstory Magazine YouTube page. And of course, my podcast listeners and iTunes and Spotify become subscribers. So thanks for considering. Of course, please remember this was a virtual event. I gave free tickets for people to virtually watch this movie in their homes all over the United States before the movie was available for rental online or in theaters. So if you want to be a part of these virtual events, go sign up at backstory.net/events. There's a tab over there where you could sign up for free on our mailing list. You'll get emails for any of the online events we're doing and just to keep you in touch as to everything that's going on at Backstory. And you'll even get invites when we finally, hopefully, go back to in-person screenings, which I'm hoping is sometime soon. But now, without any further ado, let's jump right back into our conversation with writer-director MJ Bassett about her latest film, Endangered Species. One of the things that I thought really struck me about the movie was it's not just a family that gets trapped on a safari gone wrong. They're a dysfunctional family, which I liked because,
aren't we all, darling?
Right. But often the trope is you see the family that's just struggling to band together versus the elements of nature. But here they already have big problems with each other. So coming together is another big problem for them. At what point did you realize you were going to pepper it with that element?
I think the moment that you write about real human beings is that you realize that,
Sure.
I mean, I remember, obviously my family's gone through a lot because of me, but, I remember vacations where like, yeah, nobody wants to really be there, and that throwing money at a problem is not the solution. And, Isabel, who wrote the script with me, her character of Zoe is not a million miles from who she really was when she was a teenager, And so all you're looking to do is, whenever you're writing any dramatic structure, like, where's the conflict? So conflict is everything. Without conflict, there's no movement forward dramatically. So start the family in conflict. I don't want to build towards it. And I didn't want to go through the trope of there's been an infidelity or something like that. I thought there was a more infidelity to have in his professional life. And maybe I'm sure they'd had, he probably had affairs which he knew about, but that wasn't interesting to me in that way. And I like the fact that Michael Johnson's character, has come out as gay already, right? So it's not I'm coming out. It's how do I get acceptance?
Right. The son Noah we're talking about.
Yeah,
not the husband.
it's the Noah character. It's all of these things get kind of interesting when you mash them together. Yeah. And that's what you do. And then you throw more shit at them and then you keep escalating the problems.
Well, briefly, Billy the boyfriend is there, and when Noah and Billy go and try and get away, there's just a great leopard attack on Billy, and it looked really, really well done. But it was interesting that you think Billy's dead, right? Because his body's gone, and then you find that he's hanging from a tree. And I'm guessing that that's the thing that leopards do, in which they drag their prey into the tree. You kind of set that up earlier, because I think they saw an antelope in a tree.
They do, absolutely. So we did a bit of foreshadowing.
And it was fascinating. Tell us about kind of the challenges of filming that digitally, because it looked great, but also the concept that the leopard lets Billy go, because he falls out of the tree and he does get away. Was the leopard distracted by something else? Because I thought that was interesting. I thought Billy was dead for sure.
Well, that's one of the problems. Okay, there's a bunch of things going on there. So first of all, leopards do cache their prey in trees to keep them away from lions and hyenas. So that's a behavior that is real, which I knew about. There have been cases of humans being attacked by leopards. And
one of the things that I thought really struck me about the movie was it's not just a family that gets trapped on a safari gone wrong. They're a dysfunctional family, which I liked, because
aren't we all, darling?
Right. But often the trope is you see the family that's just struggling to band together versus the elements of nature. But here they already have big problems with each other, so coming together is another big problem for them. At what point did you realize you were going to pepper it with that element?
I think the moment that you write about real human beings is that you realize that, I mean, I remember, obviously my family's gone through a lot because of me, but, I remember vacations where like, yeah, nobody wants to really be there, and that throwing money at a problem is not the solution. And, Isabel, who wrote the script with me, her character of Zoe is not a million miles from who she really was when she was a teenager, And so all you're looking to do is, whenever you're writing any dramatic structure, like, where's the conflict? So conflict is everything. Without conflict, there's no movement forward dramatically. So start the family in conflict. I don't want to build towards it. And I didn't want to go through the trope of there's been an infidelity or something like that. I thought there was a more infidelity to have in his professional life. And maybe I'm sure they'd had, he probably had affairs which he knew about, but that wasn't interesting to me in that way. And I like the fact that Michael Johnson's character, has come out as gay already, right? So it's not I'm coming out. It's how do I get acceptance?
Right. The son Noah we're talking about.
Yeah,
not the husband.
it's the Noah character. It's all of these things get kind of interesting when you mash them together. Yeah. And that's what you do. And then you throw more shit at them and then you keep escalating the problems.
Well, briefly, Billy the boyfriend is there, and when Noah and Billy go and try and get away, there's just a great leopard attack on Billy, and it looked really, really well done. But it was interesting that you think Billy's dead, right? Because his body's gone, and then you find that he's hanging from a tree. And I'm guessing that that's the thing that leopards do, in which they drag their prey into the tree. You kind of set that up earlier, because I think they saw an antelope in a tree.
They do, absolutely. So we did a bit of foreshadowing.
And it was fascinating. Tell us about kind of the challenges of filming that digitally, because it looked great, but also the concept that the leopard lets Billy go, because he falls out of the tree and he does get away. Was the leopard distracted by something else? Because I thought that was interesting. I thought Billy was dead for sure.
Well, that's one of the problems. Okay, there's a bunch of things going on there. So first of all, yeah, leopards do cache their prey in trees to keep them away from lions and hyenas. So that's a behavior that is real, which I knew about. There have been cases of humans being attacked by leopards and being hung in trees. It's very, very rare, but it has happened. And I thought, well, that's cool. I didn't want to kill Billy, and I wanted to have an attack which would feel like it was really cool, and then just have this moment of him being like waking up in the tree. I thought, how horrific is that, to wake up in the tree with a leopard snoozing in a branch nearby? So there's that. Practicalities of shooting that, again, on a small budget with not many resources, was tricky. We didn't have any camera cranes. The only kind of complex piece of grip gear I had was a drone. So a lot of the shots are drone shots.
Wait, really? Because I was going to ask you, sorry to interrupt, the shot of coming into Billy with the camera, I thought was a crane. That's a drone going into his face?
It's a small drone.
Wow, that looked great.
It's also in reverse.
Oh, okay. Sure.
So I started in the close position and pulled away and up through the branches, because coming down through the branches for that smooth move was never going to work.
Sure. That's a great shot. That's a great shot. It's
a really cool little shot. I'm very pleased with it. So then of course he falls out the tree. Now the idea was originally that the branch breaks, the leopard falls, the branch kind of hits the leopard just, fucks off, right?
Got it.
On the day, it kind of didn't work, and I thought, oh, damn it. The truth of the matter is, the leopard would land on its feet. It would immediately kill Billy and drag him back into the tree. Right. So, sorry, everybody. That's just dramatic license, because I needed it to happen. And on the day, I didn't have a solution for how, because I couldn't get it to work. Like, okay, the rigging was wrong. And I was like, all right, well, this leopard just lands and is pissed off and runs away. And that was it.
Yeah, and I got that. I thought it maybe saw other
more
prey.
Resources. Yeah, if I had more resources, I'd have done more shots of the leopard doing other leopard stuff.
Yeah.
But again, it's like I was literally, I don't storyboard, but I was ticking off, okay, that's going to be a close-up of the leopard there. Then I'm going to cut the shot there. And I'm like, oh, shit, that's my 6 shots in this sequence done.
Right. And of course, there is no leopard because it's digital. So that was...
Well, except for one, the big close-ups of the leopard are library footage I found.
Oh, wow.
Of a leopard looking in the right direction.
When it was in the tree?
Yeah, the big close-ups of the leopard.
Those were too perfect, man. Those were perfect.
They are perfect because they're real. But they're the only real animals in the movie in any narrative. There's a couple of shots of just random wildlife, but they're the only time, because I just simply couldn't afford to make a leopard digital model that would hold up that close.
Well, it's funny, though, because now that you said this, it brings something else to mind. You couldn't really kill off Billy because it's imperative to your story that he makes it back to the van. And that's how they're discovered, which brings other people in there looking for them. So you couldn't just kill him off and let the leopard kill him on that day. And I guess very briefly, this, I'm curious where you weigh in on this argument. They argue when they crash, you should always stay by the crash site. That's how people are going to find you. But then they do get out of there because the hyenas are circling them. And again, great way to use your budget. The sound design of the hyenas on the outside of the van was perfect. You didn't have to show them, and you showed them a little, but I mean, like, it was great. Tell me this: if you crashed, would you stay by your van or leave? Which do you think is better? Because they debated it.
You stay by the van. It's as simple as that. You just always stay, right? But if there are dangerous predators coming to kill you, and somebody's losing blood, and what the trick is to build enough of an argument that they don't look like idiots for making the decision. You might be going, no, don't do it, right? But the rationale is good.
Sure.
And I think once Billy had been taken, you kind of go, oh, yeah, then the hyenas, yeah, all right, fair enough. Yes, you'd leave. And he thinks he sees a lodge, so it gives him a motivation.
Right.
But then they leave the road, which is stupid, but he thinks he sees the lodge, and then the dad wants to trust the kid because the kid, it's all. So what you try and do is make sure that all the tensions within the family pay off in a dramatic way, which builds your story. So that's kind of structural writing as well as you can do it within the context of your silly survival movie.
Did you have any rewrites that you needed to do in production?
No refinements along the way. There was a few things where you go, oh, okay, can't afford to do that. There were some sequences I shot. I shot it in 18 days.
Right.
And I think there's a day's worth of material which I didn't use, which is crazy to me. Wow. There was a sequence where they try and cross a river. There's a scene in the movie, they go to the river.
Yeah, and they're about ready to cross, and then they stop.
Right, and they actually shot the sequence where they try and cross the river. And it just didn't work. It didn't work because the river was too dangerous.
Sure.
Because there are real crocodiles in the river. So the idea was, and I wrote it, was in a kind of an elaborate, they try and cross, and then the mom, because she's unconscious, he slips into the river and they have to jump in to get her, and there's a crocodile coming, and like, and then I did a kind of feeble version of that, where I actually put in the stunt clothes and I fell in the river. We tried to make crocodile sound. I think it's probably the stupidest thing I've ever done. I was waiting for Philip Winchester to come and save me, but he was like, I'm not going in that river. Are you crazy? And then it just didn't work. I didn't shoot it very well. You needed slightly more resources and time than I had. So I just took the whole part of that story out of the movie and just glued it together in a different way. So the film sort of got rewritten more in the edit, a little bit towards the end. It was running long. It felt a bit boggy. Like, how many times do you want to see a family arguing before it becomes really tiresome? What new things are we learning from their conflict? And if you're not learning new stuff or pushing character and drama forward.
That was actually my next question. Like, the lessons of the edit. Like, are there any other big scenes you want to tell us about that were cut other than crossing the river?
No, that was the only one that was cut. I reordered some stuff. It was a big, for me, from a production point of view, it's a big deal. We spent a lot of time figuring out how to do it and prepping a piece of river that would be safe and actually free of crocodiles.
Interesting.
Because we're not messing around. These things are killers. They regularly take village people and village kids. So
right,
when I said, hey,
they reference that in the movie. Now it's just a line when they're talking about crossing the river, the daughter is basically like, no, there's crocodiles. Are you kidding me? And like, it actually,
she's completely right. Yeah. Like, fuck that. There are crocodiles, she says. And she's not wrong.
Yeah.
So there was that. I reordered a little bit. I brought Jerry in a bit earlier. It's the big deal with the whole movie was figuring out how to get the story going as quickly as possible.
Sure.
Right. Because there's only they arrive in the country. So we start with them landing. Great. We don't care about anything else. There's a little bit of dialogue in the plane. We sort of establish that. Then we get to the lodge. Then we have a little bit of revelation and a bit of this. But you just got to get the story going. Right. I'm a big believer in start in the middle if you can. My big lesson is Lethal Weapon 2. Start in the middle of the car chase. Start with a whoop. So, and I also don't like long movies. I think films outstay their welcome enormously these days. Who needs a 2.5?
This had a good pacing. You get into your action really quick. So the pacing.
You wanted to hit the sort of the 3-act structure. Obviously, is the classic structure. Get nailed by the rhino at 25 minutes. Boom. Then you go. Then your story starts, and then you got a middle point thing, and then you got a thing. So the rules of screenwriting that we follow are there for a good reason, because they do allow you to set pace.
Sure.
And then if you're doing the job right, then the characters can still come alive. There's a little bit of room for them. And there were places in my initial cuts like, I like spending time with these people, but then it's getting repetitive.
How many cameras did you shoot on?
We had 2, generally 1.
Okay.
Because my DP is also my camera operator. Sometimes I operate, but mostly I'm paying too much attention to other things. We had a local Kenyan camera operator who was really, really good. But again, wasn't quite used to moving the pace that we moved at. So, it's always, obviously one catches everything, and the long lens just hoovers up bits and pieces if you need to, particularly as I shoot in a way where we would be, driving, we'd be like, Phil Winchester would be driving the family van for real. So you'd have the actors in the van, like it's the real deal.
Right.
All mic'd up and ready to go. I'd be in my director's van with my team. Then you have all the other units behind. So it'd be like sort of 5 vans just driving across the national parks. And then sometimes it'd be like, oh my God, the sun's amazing. That landscape looks incredible. Let's stop and do a scene here. So I'd radio said, we're stopping. Everyone gets out. Which scene are we going to do? Let's do scene 53. Brilliant. Where are we? What's the makeup got to be? So I try and shoot in sequence, but sometimes you just want to capture a moment. So the film sort of discovered itself in process. Again, you can only really do that when you are, the writer, director, producer, because any other executive would just take you away and put you in a straitjacket.
That makes sense. Obviously, it all culminates in Jack's death. And it's an interesting face-off, right? As you said earlier, the oil man, Jack, versus the poacher, Mitch. And Jack makes a self-sacrifice, to cause a distraction so that he's hunted.
Yeah.
And his family could get away, because he was completely right that they were all going to be killed. First off, how often does that actually happen when, tourists accidentally encounter poachers and are killed? Is that like even a thing? Because I was thinking about it. I'm surprised I don't hear more about it.
It is a thing. It's less to do with, it's not in a poacher's interest. In practically real world, it's very much not in a poacher's interest to kill tourists, because the weight of the law would come down on them so massively.
Yeah.
Also, most poaching takes place at night, so there's just not that conflict to happen. What you tend to have happen is the poachers who are affiliated with terrorist groups. So you have the Boko Harams of the world will poach in order to take those resources to pay for weapons for their terrorist activities.
Right.
And that's a very real thing. Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram, those groups. What tends to happen is you do get tourists killed. And I think if you stray into the more dangerous territories, I think about 4 or 5 months ago, there was a van shot up with a lot of tourists killed. It really does happen. So that's kind of, again, painting loosely within real world.
Yeah.
That's what I can credibly claim that to be a thing.
They went back and forth quite well, kind of with their barbs. And obviously Jack had time to kind of say goodbye to his family before that. Mm-hmm. And, he knew what was probably going to happen to him. So it was an interesting choice. And I'm curious if you ever had a version of your script where Jack lived. They do kill him.
Yeah, we didn't have a version of the script, but we debated it enormously. And I have to say that I really went down the route of he needs to live, because there needs to be positivity. The lessons need to be valuable. Otherwise, what's the point in having a character who learns lessons if they can't apply the lessons to their future? Right. That was my rationale for it.
In Jack's particular case, it seems like, Jack was definitely learning his lesson too late, unfortunately, for him.
But there's that. So I thought, I want Jack to be able to go back into the world and do good. Right. Isabel, my writer, went, no, you've got to kill him. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. She's like, no, you've got to kill him. He deserves to die. He has to die. The kids are the ones who will carry on. So I'm just trying to save my generation. And she's like, no, fuck your generation. We inherit this. And she's right, because I think it's completely the right thing to do. There was talk of shooting 2 endings and seeing, and it's like, no, I haven't got the resources I haven't got the resources.
Right.
I've got to make a decision. So we made a decision and we killed Jack. And I really liked the fact that we did it.
It worked. But it was also really satisfying to see Mitch get killed by these hyenas that had been tracking him.
Oh, well, he had to go that way.
Yeah. And so that was fascinating. And a good ending for his character as well. And kind of having him poetically laugh at the laughing hyenas was kind of a good moment in there.
I think it's very satisfying. It's you feel you feel sort of vindicated for him, what Phil has had to do to save himself. Right. And then nature taking Jerry back into its bosom, because all his pontificating about, we like to leave something for the hyenas to finish off. Well, they got him.
Yeah. Well, I guess another question would be, the coda of an endangered species encampment in Jack's name at the ending. Was that something that was in the original script, or something that you kind of decided to do while shooting?
No, that was always the plan to do it. The difficulty with it is, and there's a very practical difficulty, is that when I was going to shoot this in South Africa, where they do have lots of captive rhinos and rhino rescue facilities, I knew where I could go to get a lovely sequence of them bottle feeding some baby rhinos. Right. And it was like, that's going to be lovely, and it's going to be practical, and we can do. And then in Kenya, they don't have any captive rhinos. They barely have any wild rhinos. So I had to make a very quick pivot to, can I just do a shot which tells a story?
Just timeline. How long do you think after Jack's demise is that? Like, is it?
Well, you see Billy still with a kind of bit of bandage,
right?
And everyone's concerned. It's like I in my head is like 6 weeks or something.
Oh, okay, okay. So not
it's
that far out.
It's a compressed kind of timeline, but I think it's a story that needs to be told. And again, I wanted to leave us with a sense of something's been worth it. Otherwise, it's just nihilistic, right?
Right.
And I don't want to do that anymore. I'm too soft and sentimental.
Well, it harkens back to what you were talking about, your arguments with Isabel about, finding that positive light, and you were able to actually have it for Jack's death in that respect.
I can kill Jack, and I can have him do something valuable, and I sort of felt like it was worth it.
Well, I know we're starting to run out of time, so tell me this, what was your toughest scene, both as a writer and a director? They could be different scenes, and tell us how you creatively rose to the challenge. The scene you were sweating coming back to over and over again.
Well, it's the confrontation between Jerry's poacher character and the father. What they say in that dialogue. There was another scene between Jack, the dad, and the mom on the riverbank where it became a long speechifying. I regret my life. I wish I'd done other things, and it kind of took all that out because I felt that was now inherent in what they were doing. So it was less about being the things I agonized over as a writer. It's more about editorializing what I had then written. Choosing, because you can throw words at a thing and you think this speech is great, but then you realize, oh my God, it's 60 seconds, it's 2 minutes, it's whatever it is. And like, do we really want that? So Phil Winchester's long speech as the dad was brilliantly delivered by him. It was actually longer, I have to say.
Oh, really?
Right. And I took some stuff out of it. Now, Phil, because he's done a lot of TV, he memorized his lines pretty well. So I rolled into that scene without telling him I was rolling into the scene. I was actually supposed to split it over 2 nights. We're supposed to do one half, and they're basically the same scene. But I thought, okay, then I'll come and do the big scene the next night. But I left the cameras rolling, and I said to Phil, do you know this next scene? And he went, I'll give it a go. And I just made him do it. So he wasn't prepared. He hadn't had a chance to think about it. He just delivered it. And it was the best performance he gave because he was just feeling it. It was coming from his toes, I really, and that's the version of the scene which mostly made the movie. I went back the next night and mopped up a few close-ups and cutaways and things, but that was absolutely the one. So that was narrative, right from a writing point of view. That was the biggest challenge because I wanted the poacher to make Mitch to make his arguments and make them valid arguments,
right?
That you could legitimately say, well, you know what, he's got a point, without just him being a villain. From a directing point of view, the biggest challenge was the Rhino attack on the van. Because I only had one van, right?
Oh, wow.
Once the van flipped on its side,
right.
It was done. There was no more of that messing around, and there was no rigs. It was basically, I got a local farmer's tractor. We attached it to the front of the van and shook the van around with the actors inside and then flipped it onto its side with rigging ropes. And then it was done. So less kind of the specifics of, how do I direct this? So every day was a challenging day because of the environmental conditions. Hell, we had elephant on the set most days. We had to wait for the elephants to leave.
Really?
Right? Yeah, I'd never imagined in my life too many elephant would be my problem. Right? But we shot in Kenya for real. We had to have rangers with weapons around us.
Right.
Lion were around. Real hyenas were around.
Did that mess up your soundtrack?
Oh, it's all part of the world, right? I'd love it.
No, but because sometimes, if there's a lot going on and you're in the middle of a dialogue heavy scene and that's in the background, did you have to redo or re-record anything because of that, or just it was? I
mean, I'm a big fan of ADR, so I never stopped for sound.
Okay.
It's like I know that I make noisy movies. There's always some kind of machinery going on, particularly if you've done lots of gunfire movies.
Sure.
Like you can't hear anything. With these, again, we had a good sound recordist. He got in there and he knew how I was working. Elephant are generally pretty quiet. They come up to you very quietly. Then most animals, when they're hunting you, are not noisy, right? They don't want to be. And the snakes and spiders and things like that are all part of the package. So once we'd embraced that and go, this is where we are. We're actually shooting a movie in Kenya, in a place where there are dangerous creatures and the rangers are there to look after us. You embrace it, you get on with it. It's a daily challenge, but hell, it was fun.
Done if you came into like a situation just being out there in the wild that was going to mess with your schedule when you had such a short schedule? Was there any padding or contingency plan?
No, there was no cover. I mean, all you got to do is you've got to be nimble about things. So
sure.
If you go, and it happened a few times, like this bit of the park's closed off, or they've had rain in this area, or whatever it's going to be. There's a dust storm coming through. You go, great, we'll go and do this. You cannot let these things, if you have the movie in your head, and you're shooting in practical locations, truth of the matter is you go, okay, I know what I'm going to do next. Right? You talk about prep and I dismissed prep, and it's not, it's like, you've got to know what you're doing. You've got to know what you want. and absolutely not be freaked out by things that change, because things will change.
Yeah.
Stuff that you're planning won't go how you wanted it to go. So you have to have a plan A through Z and even beyond. And every one of them has got to fit into the structure of the movie you're making. And listen, I'm not James Cameron. I'm not, Catherine Bigelow. I don't have those kinds of resources. So I've got to work in a way which allows me to constantly maneuver and be light on my feet and deliver the film that I want. And by doing that, and I actually like shooting that way. I don't really like the formal structure of the studio system anymore. I'd rather be hanging off a mountain somewhere.
Well, it definitely worked. What's next? What could you tell us about that you're working on next?
The next one will be the third in these eco action genre pictures.
Okay.
But this one's going to be out on the ocean.
Oh, wow.
So this will be about what's happening to the oceans. Again, it's a heist movie with sharks and sinking boats. And that's what it's, there'll be a conversation about what we're doing to the oceans of the world.
That sounds great. Does it have a title?
It's called Shark.
Okay. There you go.
There's never been a movie called Shark.
Are you co-writing it with Isabel?
No, that's when I wrote that myself.
Okay.
So
cool.
I'm trying to rope her into being in it, but I don't know if she's so busy now. She's successful. She doesn't need me. I did all the nepotism. I love my kids. I'll open all the doors for them, and then they're just on their own now.
Well, that's good. You got to let them out into the world. Well, look, you've been very generous with your time. I can't wait to see what you do next. And hopefully we'll have you back to talk about Shark in the future. MJ, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Jeff. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
And that's how the Q&A went down. Special thanks again to writer-director MJ Bassett for being so generous with her time in talking about her latest film, Endangered Species. And folks, I hope you help spread the word about Endangered Species online to your friends via social media, because it's really important to do that right now for independent films. If you'd like to join us for one of these virtual events, I hope you sign up on our email list, which you could find over at backstory.net/events. There's a sign up tab right there. You'll get emails from us when there's another virtual event that you could sign up for, so you could see a movie before anyone else from the comfort of your home and see the Q&A as well. Of course, as everything is getting safer, I'm hoping to go back into movie theaters to do these Q&A screenings, so you'll get those emails as well when that happens too. The Q&A with Jeff Goldsmith podcast is a copyright of Unlikely Films Incorporated in 2021. All rights reserved. And folks, should you ever want to reach out to me, you could find me running the social media for my own page of Yo Goldsmith on Twitter and on Instagram, or for the Backstory Magazine page of Backstory_mag on Twitter or on Instagram. I also run a Facebook fan page. I'm not on there as much, but you could reach out there. And you could always write in a letter, backstoryletters@gmail.com, and I'll do my darndest to respond when I get a chance. I'm Jeff Goldsmith, the publisher of Backstory Magazine and the host of the Q&A, thanking you for tuning in and telling you to stay out of trouble. Till next week.